Hi everyone, good evening. Welcome to the NEA Big Read Fieldwork Fails. My name is Chelsea and I'm a museum educator at the Florida Museum, and I'm so excited to introduce you to the second event of this series and the very first virtual Fieldwork Fails. If you've been to our events before, you should expect an evening of our usual shenanigans, and if you're new, you are in for a treat. This event wouldn't have been possible without the financial support from the National Endowment for the Arts and our amazing supportive partners who are here in the audience tonight from the Alachua County Library District. The National Endowment for the Arts Big Read is a series of events created to build community in Alachua County and all over Florida, obviously, because we got people from all over the place now that we're virtual. But we want to do this by sharing stories of science, and we'll be doing this through spring 2021. So we have a lot of events in store for all of you. Throughout this series, we're going to be exploring Lab Girl, which is a memoir by the award-winning author and scientist Hope Jaren. We'll also be exploring other titles for our younger audiences, including Swimming with Sharks, Evelyn the Entomologist, and Finding Wonders. Our next events in this series include the Lab Girl meetups, the next one, which will be October 13th at 7 p.m. and November 17th at 7 p.m. And we'll put the links to all this information in the chat for all of you as well. Our next event for our littlest scientists includes a Swimming with Sharks meetup, and that'll be December 5th at 10 a.m. So we got some marine biologists excited to meet everyone at that event. To sign up for these events, as well as others in the series, you can follow these links that we will also be putting in the chat if they're not there already. Look out for them shortly. So tonight, back to what you're all actually here for right now, tonight you're going to hear 5 stories from thoughtful University of Florida scientists. So after the hour of storytelling, our scientists have volunteered to stay on the Zoom to bravely answer a few of your questions at the end. So make sure to use the chat box throughout the event and make sure you're addressing it to all attendees and panelists. This way everyone can see what you're saying. And you can be putting those questions or comments in the chat throughout the event tonight. You'll notice that right now your video and your camera are automatically turned off. This is because we're using a webinar feature, so you can use the chat to kind of participate, but not your videos and cameras at this event. This is because we want to give our storytellers the spotlight and the stage as if it was an in-person show. So please keep in mind that our storytellers are using different kinds of Wi-Fi connections and microphones, so the sound levels might be a little different depending on who's talking. So make sure you're adjusting your own audio accordingly so you can hear everybody. At the end of this event, I'm going to be dropping a survey in the chat. The survey will also arrive in your email inboxes. And the survey will really help us to plan future events similar to this in the future. So we really would like your input. So make sure that you help us out with that survey. So now that the housekeeping is out of the way, I'd like to introduce you to the hostess with the mostest, Taylor Williams of Guts and Glory G&B. Taylor is a creative director of Guts and Glory G&B. She is also a trainer, facilitator, writer, speaker, and instructor. So this host really does it all. So she uses the rules of improv, storytelling, communication, and presence to teach corporate trainings. She's also an adjunct in the College of Journalism at the University of Florida. So Guts and Glory is an amazing organization that started 3.5 years ago. And it was Taylor's dream to allow Gainesvillians to put their true, polished stories on a live stage. And I don't know how many shows we've done so far total, and I say we because I've been volunteering at the Guts and Glory show since the very beginning. So I believe strongly in this format of communication and community building. But we've, actually, we've done 50 shows. I just got this information. They've done more than 50 shows. So this includes the popular Fieldwork Fails that we'll actually be seeing tonight. So this is super awesome. You guys all here tonight able to see this amazing production. And with that, I'm gonna invite Taylor to the stage. Taylor, are you out there?
I'm here.
Awesome.
Somewhere. I'm in Gainesville in my home as well, like many of you. So it
Great.
is so fun to see where people were chiming in from, and that we just have people from everywhere. That's so great. That was our intention. Yeah, thank you, Chelsea. People are saying that they miss the live Guts and Glory shows. We miss you guys too. It's been really hard. We've missed a lot of them. So this is a great kind of opportunity to do something together still. Yeah, thank you, Chelsea. And
Yeah, I'm going to turn it over to you and turn my camera off and let the show begin. Thanks,
okay,
Taylor.
all right. Thank you. Chelsea has been, like she said, a volunteer with Guts and Glory since the very beginning, since our first show many, many moons ago. And we've done a lot of work together through Fieldwork Fails, but also through making presentations and doing special programs together. So I'm deeply grateful for her and everything she's brought to our world of storytelling and the partnership with the museum. And thanks to the NEA and the Alachua County Library as well for this opportunity. I'm so excited to present the scientists to you tonight. One magical thing about our Fieldwork Fails storytelling series, and I think the reason it's been so popular is because it allows the scientists to be scientists and be that part of who they are, but also to be human beings first. And storytelling really allows people to be their most authentic and brave self, even when it's scary and might feel vulnerable and like you're putting your whole self out there. That's our point. So we always tell our scientists, you don't need a PowerPoint presentation. You don't need data. You don't need research. You don't need a lot of the things that would normally back you up and maybe make you feel legit. You just have to show up and be yourself. Storytelling has a way of doing that for any group, of making us our most human selves. So even when we can't, this is something we say in all of our shows, even when we can't relate to someone's literal experience, we can relate to the humanity, to the emotion in their story, and to some of the details around their experience. So we hope that regardless of whether you came for science or stories or science and stories, that there's something for you tonight. And I think you'll experience a lot of bravery in what our 5 scientists have to share with you this evening. Failure is a particularly awesome thing to be gathering around because failure is so real and it's hard, and it's also often very funny, even within some of the pain that comes with it. So that's what we're going to run with tonight. Without further ado, as they say in show business, let's get started. Our first storyteller is Trista Brophy. And Trista is a doctoral student at UF School of Natural Resources and Environment. She studies coupled human and environmental interactions related to stormwater management and urban planning using remote sensing and other geospatial data. One of my favorite things about these bios is that I don't know what half of them mean. Prior to coming to UF, she gained experience working in the fields of sustainability and water conservation for local government in the Tampa Bay area. So those of you who are in Tampa, you may know this gal. When she's not in her scientist role, she is dancing and teaching Argentine tango. Ooh la la. Here she is, Trista Brophy.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. So these days I'm here in my home office and my work is behind multiple monitors, and I work with remote sensing satellite data by choice, actually. But there was a time in the very early stages of my scientific career that I spent a lot of time outside in the wild. So in my undergraduate program, I had a summer internship in an ecology lab. And the project I was involved with was studying the effects of flooding and ocean warming on organic matter in the soils of mangrove forest. So basically, we were measuring how nutrients move in and out of systems. My lab mates included 2 seasoned PhDs, which I was not at the time, a postdoc, lab manager, and the principal investigator, Dr. Lewis. Now, this was my first time in a lab that included any field work. And the week before we were scheduled to go out, I spent working in the lab, preparing equipment and going over procedures. So we needed to sample the soils of 18 different sites in the Salt Springs State Park, which is a very large intertidal estuary just off of the west coast of Florida, north of Tampa Bay. These sites were very remote and only accessible by boat. This was going to be a really long journey that involved meeting very early in the morning at the university. And remember, I was an undergraduate student back then, so anything before 8 a.m. was really, really early to me. We had to load the equipment, trailer the boat over 1 hour away to the launch site, and from there we were supposed to drive the boat to our selected site for the day. Now, I had interviewed for this position. I was aware of the details mostly, and I assumed that since I was hired for the job, that the lab manager was also aware of my skills and limitations. We had discussed my experience on the water, with boats, and in marine systems. I was born and raised in Florida. I've spent my whole life being in the outdoors. I've been fishing, scuba diving, hiking, all sorts of ecosystems in Florida and across the world. So I was pretty certain that the lab manager assumed I knew my way around mangrove forest. And you know what they say about making assumptions, right? So on my very first field day, we set out really early, and I showed up to the lab wearing my most comfortable beach shorts, super comfy short sleeve cotton t-shirt, and a cheap pair of water shoes that I actually had to pick up last minute from Walgreens because I forgot to get them the week before when I was prepping for field work. And my lab mates all had on rugged hiking shoes, long pants, long sleeve shirts that you always see fishermen wearing. And they looked like they were going to explore the Amazon. I was really confused about why they were wearing these like big heavy gear. But I was also really proud, like, well, I'm the youngest and I'm gonna be the most comfortable on this relaxing boat trip. And the day was relaxing and it was beautiful and sunny and breezy as we made that super long journey from the lab to the boat ramp to the study area. And I was so excited as we pulled up to our first site, but I noticed my teammates' faces, they weren't as excited as I was. And I just thought, oh, maybe it's because they've already been here and done this. But I was super excited. And so we pulled up to the site and I was expecting, like expansive beach and a place to walk, but there was no beach. It was just water and mangroves. I guess perfect for the experiment we were doing, but super daunting for a crew trying to like make their way in. So this environment is so remote that we needed a boat, and it feels really empty and desolate at first. But if you stop long enough, if you're quiet, you'll notice that you're surrounded by hundreds of other creatures. They're permanent residents of this place that's very strange to you. Small little crabs who keep playing hide and seek from their little holes in the ground, many of them looking like they've been lifting weights with only one claw. Birds singing everywhere, their songs of summer. Now, if you were like me, you would see this beautiful mangrove forest and not the trees, the big picture, the beauty of it and not the beast. And if you're like me, you prepared by wearing your super comfy shorts and your t-shirt and those fun, thin little water shoes that are meant for beach combing only. But if you are like I was back then, you have no idea how poorly prepared you are for this environment. But your teammates know. They know. So for all the beauty of the ecosystem in the gorgeous Gulf Coast of Florida, there was really danger everywhere. So there was pretty crabs here and sweet birds chirping there, but a branch just slashed my bare leg open. And why are there mosquitoes everywhere? I'm just getting bit by dozens of mosquitoes. And I stepped on an oyster or a rock or a shell. I don't even know, but I'm bleeding. There's definitely blood everywhere. And then the thing that could strike fear into the hearts of even the toughest mangrove warriors, a little slender character, lemon lime in color, with long, slinky legs, 8 long, slinky legs. Excuse me, but why are there spiders here everywhere? Nobody told me about this. So the rest of the team, they were laughing it off. Of course, they didn't like the spiders or the mosquitoes or the shells, but they were seasoned field workers and they had come prepared with sensible things like proper long pants and long sleeve shirts. And, those waterproof hiking shoes I was laughing at, and hats. I can't believe I didn't bring a hat. So there we were, barely a few feet into the forest. And we had to walk 30 meters into the heart of this to set up our nutrient cycling experiment. And there were just these giant spiders everywhere. And when I say giant, I mean like the size of your hand, giant. So I want everybody to do a little exercise. Just hold your hand up in front of you, okay? Now look at your thumb. So your thumb is about 2 inches, and that's the same as the average body of a banana spider. And their legs can extend up to 5 inches, which is about the average size of a hand. So now imagine 5 inches of spider directly on your face, because you were looking at the forest and not the trees, and definitely weren't looking at the 8-legged beast. But don't worry, the banana spiders feed on butterflies, bees, flies, moths, and wasps, and thankfully not people. We had the mosquitoes for that. Banana spiders do have a potent venom though, but it's not lethal to us, so no big deal there. They're also called orb weaver spiders because they weave these circular orb-shaped webs, which can be as wide as 15 feet. 15 feet of spider web? Are you joking? These arachnids are way better prepared than I am, and they're waiting silently for prey to run or walk like me across their path. Now, the experts say that they're not aggressive, whatever. They're so docile that they are even known to share webs, an unusual trait among spiders, apparently. Share webs? Like there could be more than one spider per web? You've got to be joking, right? Nope, wrong. These little spider devils were everywhere, and they were having parties in webs, it seemed like. Definitely no social distancing going on in those webs. Experts also say that these spiders don't usually bite, and those people who get bitten are just trying to swat the animal away, and the spider's trying to protect themselves. I'm a swatter, big time. So I spent that first field day on this really cool research project getting bit by literally dozens of spiders, among all the other things that were definitely trying to kill me. But we eventually made it to the center of the mangrove. We set up our experiment, no issues, and it was an otherwise uneventful day. But I returned home that night, 14 hours later, tired, exhausted, and I had dealt with spider bites, mosquito bites, cuts on my arms, my legs, my feet. So I ordered some proper field clothing online, and I wish I had known about REI sooner. So if you are looking to avoid these creepy crawlers when you go out into the wild, wild nature of Florida, I've got a few suggestions. Steer clear of wooded areas, especially those with dense canopies like mangroves where these spiders live. Avoid going off hiking trails like we did, and don't go out first thing in the morning when the creepy crawlers are active like we did. And don't panic if you run into a web like I did. And please, for the love of science, just wear some frickin' pants. Thank you so much.
Yay! The chat was so great. People are not into orb weaving spiders, as it turns out. It doesn't sound fun. I'm so sorry. Trista, thank you for starting us out. Sometimes it can be difficult to go first, a little bit of an act of extra bravery there. Yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I don't know whether to think these scientists are amazing or crazy or a little bit of both, but I just sit back and listen in awe, as it seems that a lot of you are doing. And yes, someone said in the chat right now, a great story and lots of good vulnerability. See, isn't that a recipe for success here? I think that's what you'll see for the rest of the show. So thank you, Trista. And people really like your shirt. So you may in the chat want to put where you purchased said shirt. So I don't know if people heard your story at all, but people really like your shirt. I think that point became very evident. All right, let's keep it rocking. You don't get any breaks. What's great is if you need to use the restroom or pour yourself a cocktail or some tea or whatever, you can leave whenever you want. You can take your device with you to the kitchen, to the bathroom if you want. I don't know, do your thing, and we'll see you when you get back after you finish ordering Trista's t-shirt. Okay, next is Aditi Jayarajan, and she is from Bangalore, India, the place with perfect weather, she says. Too bad she's not taking us there, although it's been pretty good recently. She graduated with a master's degree from Bangalore University and went on to explore frogs, lizards, and snakes in the Western Ghats. She's currently getting her PhD in zoology from UF. And she loves her research on bats in the mammalogy collections and likes to take slow motion videos of them. How cool, right? In her spare time, she likes photographing creepy crawly things and reading books. You just wait for this story. Here is Aditi.
Hey everyone. So my name is Aditi and my name means free and unbounded, which is going to tell you a lot about me. So I actually use museum collections as part of my research on bats, and I love bats. But wait, I'm about to tell you a story on snakes. So don't tell anyone, but I'm actually a secret herpetologist at heart. Don't tell anyone, because otherwise they're going to find out in the mammalogy collections, okay? And I got to do some field work in southern India with one of my herpetologist friends. His name is Gauri, and he promised me the ultimate field experience. Wait, I forgot to tell you, he kind of studies venomous snakes. So Gauri also told me that he knew a place where we could find snakes. And I said, okay, that sounds great. Now keep in mind, I'm a very cautious and prepared person, and you'd usually find me in the lab running experiments like PCR after PCR after PCR. But this was about to be my first time getting hands-on real field experience. And I just couldn't wait. So I took a bunch of my friends along for this trip, and we drove down these winding roads along the southern portions of the Western Ghats. We were heading off to Wayanad in Kerala, whose weather is eerily similar to Florida. Go figure. Now I'm going to tell you a little bit about Gauri. Okay, so Gauri is my friend. He can charm a snake, but he's even more charming in person. And he told me I would get to cut the scales off a live king cobra, whose scientific name is Ophiophagus hanna. Ophiophagus meaning snake-eating snake. Now, their venom is not the most potent among venomous snakes, but the amount of neurotoxin that they can deliver in a single bite, up to 0.2 of an ounce, is enough to kill about 20 people or a small elephant. The day had arrived. It was very misty outside, and the air was damp and heavy, very much like the humidity in Florida. And we arrived at this veterinary hospital. I went in, and there was this tiny corridor with a table right at the end, which was blocking off a door. And around 50 people had come to watch. I peered into the room just to size up this annoyed little subadult. He was about 9 feet long and rather feisty at the time. So I calmed myself. We set up in the corridor where the lights kept flickering on and off, straight out of a horror movie set. Now keep in mind that Gauri set up a brick against the wall, and he had a pipe and a bag attached. And he got ready to ease the snake into the bag so that I could cut off its scales for science. As Gauri got the snake under control, I got ready with my scissors, right? It was my moment to shine. I mean, I practiced on several rat snakes before, so I was very, very prepared, right? I readied myself, and I felt something near my face. A guy appeared from out of nowhere, trying to get a closer look at the snake. Startled, I nearly dropped my scissors. Excuse me, do you mind moving? I kind of said to myself. And Gauri requested that he examine the snake later, and finally he moved away. All right, I repositioned myself. As I attempted to cut the scales, I realized that the scissors were just not working. Now, there's a statistic out there that says about 2,500 left-handed people die using right-handed instruments every year, I believe I was about to test this out. I had to think fast as the snake was getting very, very impatient. So I twisted my hand and I started cutting. Now the snake got thoroughly annoyed and reared his head. And I managed to nick him. My hands were trembling and I looked over at Gauri for help. Now he reassured me that if the king cobra was about to bite anyone, he'd be the first. And for some reason, that was oddly comforting to me. Now I continued cutting off the scales in a twisted manner, and they honestly felt like armor to me. I finished doing the job and I felt so proud of myself. Now Gauri got the king back into the bag and was about to demonstrate to another student how to handle a different snake. The lights flickered on and off, and I went towards the closed end of the corridor. Now this student was learning how to use the snake hook, and Gauri got this beautiful spectacle cobra out of another bag. Except that the spectacle cobra had just sensed that the king cobra had used the same pipe, Ophiophagus, snake-eating snake. And it started hissing like mad, which set off the monkeys in the next room, which then set off the deer, which then set me off. Since I was at the closed end of the corridor, I had nowhere to run, except for the table, which I could probably try to jump on. Fortunately, the student got the snake under control, and all in all, it was a great day. So I have a couple of things to keep in mind if you ever do field work or go with a herpetologist somewhere. Anytime you go with a herpetologist, always explicitly ask them where you're going and what you're doing. And always, always, always carry a set of left-handed scissors. Thank you.
I went and got these just in case something were to occur during that story. Aditi, that is, everyone in the chat was saying how terrifying that was. I think people, if anyone was sitting outside during that story, or maybe in a corridor filled with various animals, everyone moved in that moment. Aditi does such a wonderful job of raising the stakes, which is something we love in storytelling, is she builds it up to the point where you're sweating before she tells you if she's going to be okay or what's happening or why she would ever make a choice like this. And so that's such a great skill that she shows us here too. And see how you're learning as you're listening. This is such a valuable use of your time. Aditi, also as a side note, I don't think you can kind of study venomous snakes. Like you're either studying them or you're not. That's just a terrifying story. And I think now, anytime I see like something is left-handed or right-handed, I question it. There's no safe option now. And I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't met you. Thank you so much for your way of telling and for doing these crazy things. I think we want to try to get your friend, we want to get Gauri on the show at some point, which seems critical in this moment. All right, grab your scissors, ladies and gentlemen, and get ready for our next storyteller. Hopefully you won't need them for this. Ali Bordini hails from San Antonio, Texas, where she learned to catch critters, collect precious plants, and enjoy Mexican food every day. All great skills. After receiving her master's from Texas State University, she moved to Gainesville to work in a horticulture lab, then found her place doing outreach education. In her spare time, which she probably doesn't have much of, she enjoys baking delicious goodies, popping popcorn for movie nights that she'll sleep through, I can relate to that, and creating educational science videos on her YouTube channel with her dog. Who doesn't love that? Please promise that you'll watch her tell her story and then go look up her YouTube channel. Here is Ali Bordini with our third story.
Thank you so much, Taylor, for that awesome intro. So I'm just gonna jump right into it. When I was an undergrad, I was an environmental studies major and a biology and French minor. Studying abroad was a big part of both the school and my degrees. I had to study abroad in a francophone country and do some sort of environmental research project. So I thought, let's kill two metaphorical birds with one stone. Of the programs offered to me, I could either go to Quebec, Canada in January or Madagascar, and it was an obvious choice. I'm actually part reptile, and if the world dips below 80 degrees, I literally sit in a blanket and cry until my body warms up. I need warm and sun. My dad has anxiety through the roof, and me being in a country across an ocean with limited communication was not his jam. But my mom is the complete opposite. So anyway, I went to Madagascar against my father's wishes, which was very Little Mermaid of me. The trip was fantastic. The first 3 months, we hung out in Fort Dauphin, which is just a very casual beach city in southern Madagascar. We lived with homestay families, would learn something ecological or cultural in our schoolhouse, and then go on a week-long camping trip to cover the week's lesson in the field. My days were filled with playing hide and go seek with the neighborhood kids, watching a definitely not pirated copy of Terminator in French 15 times in a row, and lessons overlooking the beach or camping under the stars. So after about 3 months of this utopia, it was time to start a month-long independent study project. We could go anywhere, study anything. It could be science, economics, literature, whatever you wanted. This was my time to shine. This is what I'd been waiting for. Field experience. Let me have it. In our travels, I fell in love with one animal in particular. And no, it's not the ever adorable lemur. I fell in love with the chameleon. Every single time I saw a chameleon, I'd have a full-on Vogue photo shoot. My classmates would beckon me when they saw one. I could spot them driving in our rickety bus in the middle of nowhere. I love them. But you were here for my fieldwork story. So my advisors set me up at a mining site in Fort Dauphin where I was to use different chameleon species locations as an indicator of ecosystem health. They set me up with one of their local ecology students to help identify chameleons, set up transects, and make sure I didn't die. We would be camping for a week in an area the mining company was saving for conservation. The forest was actually an endangered littoral forest. Littoral forests are coastal forest ecosystems with saltwater adapted plants, and I was so pumped to get to do some pretty cool work in such an important dying ecosystem. So at our campsite, we'd eat our breakfast of bread, jam, and a fried egg, map out our transects, and measure the DBH, or diameter at breast height, of every tree along the transect. Then we'd eat lunch, which for me was a huge plate of rice and some manioc, and then take a nap from about noon to 8, which I'm just now realizing is asleep. Then it was time to start walking our transects. The mining company gave us headlamps, a GPS, and some super comfortable bright yellow rain suits, so we were always visible at night. When I say super comfortable, I mean these things are one size fits absolutely no one. The band was pretty tight, but the legs were really baggy. I tripped over them constantly. I'm built like a giraffe, so it's not really that surprising. But I'm so glad I had that awful suit because the last month of my trip was the rainy season. Rainy seasons in Madagascar are a lot of rain. Who would have thunk it? And it's also pretty chilly, my favorite, right? And I only had a single long sleeve shirt with me. So every afternoon when it wasn't raining, I'd put my single long sleeve shirt out to dry, but it wasn't sunny for very long, so my shirt was constantly wet this whole week. My afternoon sleeps involved me staying up, trying to be dry and warm, and keeping ants from biting holes into my tent. They were trying to forage the Twizzlers my mom had somehow shipped to me. So the first night of my fieldwork went pretty great. Chameleons are not that hard to find. You'd think they'd be really blended in with their surroundings, but instead a lot of them would sit on the ends of branches, weighing it down like a Charlie Brown Christmas tree bauble. I'd grab these little buddies in their sleep, note their species, tail and body length, sex. All the while, they're turning a darker and darker gray. They were pretty mad at me. Some bit me really hard. And then we'd have a Vogue photo shoot. Luckily, the first night was rain-free, and we only got lost on our transect in the woods, in the dark, once. The rest of the fieldwork was a little different. While finding tons of chameleons, we'd also find ourselves constantly lost. I've never been so lost in my life. Every tree looked the same, and every night it rained hard. One night we got lost for hours, which, not gonna lie, my dad filled me with so many anxiety-ridden stories growing up, like I was gonna be kidnapped by a man in a clown costume in the woods. I thought I was done for. Luckily, I was the only clown there because I'm really challenged when it comes to using a GPS, and I was the one that got us lost. We were just finishing the transect and we're just coming out of the woods, legs wobbling over my pant legs, and my hair suddenly became more frazzled than Miss Frizzle. And less than 60 feet away from us, I saw the most blinding bolt of lightning. My ears were still ringing 30 minutes later. And that was my near-death experience. Whew. Another less rainy and less lightning-y occasion, I was still a soaked mop of a human being, but I found some pretty key species that day. I was pretty excited, and I wasn't electrocuted, but I also found a critter, or a critter colony, that I did not want to find. There I was in that light rain in my really comfy yellow rain suit, casually pushing through plants in an endangered ecosystem in Madagascar, when I just started feeling lots of hard pinches. I don't know if anyone's ever had their pants filled with wasps, but it's not fun. Peeling out the band of my comfy yellow rain pants, I see about 10 neon green wasps in my pants. They just climbed up the billowy pant leg and started stinging all over my thighs, and the band was so uncomfortably tight, I couldn't open it long enough to get them out, and taking my pants off in the middle of the woods would have been a struggle. So what do? I start pounding my thighs with my fists like a frustrated toddler pounds into a ball of Play-Doh. I had to kill every last one of these neon green wasps, and I love bugs, so this kind of broke my heart. But the worst part is all I got was swelling. I did not get any wasp superpowers. Luckily, my anxious dad made me pack some antihistamines and creams and all the medicinal potions I might need, despite me saying, I won't need anything. It's always good to be prepared, even if it means carrying a heavy pack for 4 months. By the end of the week, it had rained so much, my shirt had never completely dried, and I was tired of those yellow pants, but I was still having a lot of fun. Unfortunately, because it's been raining this entire week and we're in a coastal littoral forest, things got very swampy. I have no idea how much rain occurred over my 8 hours sleep between marking my transect and walking my transect, but there was a literal lake that had formed in the middle of my last 3 transects, making them completely impassable and impossible. I half expected Yoda to come out and speak to me in cryptic riddles. So just as my week went from extremely exciting to kind of a peaceful letdown, my fieldwork fails has kind of followed suit. But wait, there's more. Remember those chameleon Vogue photo shoots I had? Well, thank goodness I had them. Turns out my field hand that my advisors hired to help me only really knew desert chameleons. So when I turned up at the mining company's fauna department with all my identified species, I had to go back through every single one of them and re-identify them. Everything worked out in the end, and I had the most amazing fieldwork time. So what did I learn from this experience? Well, 1, lightning is dangerous, and your hair really does fizzle up. 2, wasps, they can hurt, and they do not give you superpowers. 3, I really absolutely do not like the cold and rain, and it makes me into a wet noodle with the coordination of a baby giraffe. 4, chameleons are just like us and do not appreciate being woken up, but I still really love them. And 5, photograph everything and appreciate every experience. If I could go back right now and almost get struck by lightning and definitely get stung by wasps, I would do it in a heartbeat.
I think I'm with your dad, Ellie. I just want to call it back to your dad. Someone in the chat said your dad knows best. Maybe they're right. I love that story. And I believe these all take us on these journeys where you get to be with them. You're like feeling the weather and you're feeling their pants one size fits no one and all these things. I do want to also point out, Allie, that number one, I can identify with Miss Frizzle every day of the week, regardless of where I'm living. And number two, any job that means that I have to measure tail and body length is something I don't want to do, which is why I'm a storytelling show producer. So thank you so much for being the one who can teach us those things. And thank you for your enthusiasm and your energy on screen. Hopefully what all of you are feeling is that you can tell stories of failure. Did you even remember that they were about failure? Probably not, because they are told with honesty and, yes, that keyword vulnerability and enthusiasm and excitement. So another thing, we get this question a lot, so I just want to reiterate this, is a lot of people would assume that scientists are trying to present something about their research or their data or something official that looks like they are at a conference. But in this case, we're asking them to be the main character of a personal story. And that's what makes these really special without even it doesn't take away from the fact that they're a scientist. It just makes them whole. So we just love that. And, I would invite all of you to think about what that is in your own life. Where do you get your identity from? Can you be more than one thing? Can you be more than 5 things? What do you over-identify with that may not be real to you anymore? What's a past identity that you can let go of? So just a little extra something right there that that maybe these scientists can help us all think about tonight and into the future. Hopefully you are inspired. All right, shall we move on? All right, Laurel, and thank you, Ellie. Thank you. Laurel Kaminsky is the digitization manager in the Lepidoptera collection of the Florida Museum. Her favorite type of food is stir fry because there's an unlimited amount of veggie combinations. It's a very good reason. Laurel is a lichen expert. I guess you could say she likens lichens. Now, while I'd like to claim that I came up with that, it was you, Laurel. And everyone should know that it was you and you deserve all of the credit. Are you ready, Laurel?
Yes, I'm ready.
Go.
Okay. And Taylor, I haven't heard that one before. What's even funnier though is when I tell people I study lichens and they look at me and they say, "You study werewolves?" No, those are lycans, which are mythical creatures from underworld. I study lichens, which are a symbiotic relationship between a fungus and a photosynthesizing partner. Florida has lots of cool lichens, but I'd like to share 2 adventures from my master's with the genus Peltidra. Peltidra is really common everywhere in the United States except Florida. There's only about 10 populations and these remnants from the last ice age. So you might be wondering what Peltidra looks like, but we'll get to that later. So the first time that I saw Peltidra, I was working at Boise State University. My boss was a snowbird and he had collected Peltidra polydactylon from Ovino State Park. I thought, no way could this be right. For one thing, polydactylon sounds like a dinosaur, not a lichen. And for another, the closest population is the Southern Appalachian Mountains. So definitely not in Florida. I decided to take out a book, and since I had the specimen right in front of me, to compare it to images in the book. Nothing really matched, so I decided to get onto Google Images, and I typed in Peltidra and Florida and pressed search. Again, most of the specimens didn't match. They were too small, too big, not the right color, different features. And then there was a Peltidra that had 2 arms and 2 legs. It was a woman who was who had a big smile on her face and a nice tiara and long flowy hair. She was out in the woods and she just looked so happy. She also wasn't wearing any clothes. I was looking at nude photos at work. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get in trouble. And then I also felt really horrified. Like, you know, when you're thinking of, when you're doing something and you think that it's wrong, that was like where I was. And so I was trying so hard not to look at these images, but she just looked really happy and really carefree. And I was a little bit jealous and drawn to her. I shoved the thought aside and I thought, no, I need to figure out what lichen this is. After about another hour of searching, I gave up because there really wasn't any good match. But I thought, I'll figure it out one day. So fast forward a couple of years later, I'm a year and a half into my master's, and I need data and lots of it. So I hatched this whirlwind trip to go to 3 state parks in 3 days, starting on Christmas Eve. A couple of weeks before going on this trip, I had to notify the park rangers that I was going to be collecting in their park. The permit didn't specify if I could call or email. So I thought, oh, calling is so much more personable. It'll be great. I'll get to speak to them and we'll have a good chat. So I took out my flip phone and I called and left a voice message. Clearly, I was behind the times because I never heard back from them. So the first 2 days of the collecting trip were really intense. I just was driving a lot, doing a lot of field work, working 14-hour days. And the first 2 state parks were busts. I could not find what I needed for my research. And I was really frantic. And I was getting really worried that I was a failure and that this trip would be a failure. And I just threw all my energy into just thinking about these lichens and trying to just salvage this trip. I wore myself out. So on day 3, I pull up to Torreya State Park and I decide not to check in with the park ranger. I'm too tired. I don't want to do this. Nothing bad will happen. I'll just grab my specimens and I'll go back to Gainesville. And so I grab a map and I just start walking. By some miracle, I stumbled upon this stream and it had all the specimens that I needed for my research. I just felt relieved. And so I'm running a transect, collecting every 20 feet or so along this beautiful ravine. When I happened to peer down, and there, right at the edge of the water, was this big grayish mass. And I thought, that's not a leaf litter. That's not something that looks alive. Could it be a Peltidra? And so I walked down carefully over this soft, squishy moss to the water's edge. And I picked some up, and it is Peltidra. It was my first time seeing it in Florida. I remember trying to feel happy and excited and to savor that moment, but I didn't really feel anything. I just thought it. I'm just exhausted. I'll feel excited later. So I vouchered it, and then I just continued on. A little while later, there's another specimen that I really wanted to collect. And so I just was really exhausted. I just thought, oh, I'm just gonna put my hand underneath and I'm gonna catch this specimen. And so I took out my knife and I cut down, but it was really tightly adhered to the bark. And so I had to push down harder. Unfortunately, the momentum carried the blade sliced right through the specimen and deeply into my right ring finger. I could see the white flesh in the inside of my body. I freaked out. I really freaked out. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna bleed to death. And then I put a Band-Aid on. And then I started freaking out again. Well, maybe I'm gonna bleed to death. And so I thought, well, should I call the park ranger? oh no, I didn't check in with them. But I decided to call them just in case I needed help. So I took out my flip phone. I had jotted the number on the back of my permit and I called them. Of course, they weren't really expecting a researcher and demanded that I come visit them. I thought, oh no, I just ruined the permit for everybody, all 5 of us on it. So going back to the ranger's office, I go into the men's restroom and I just have to like try to clean the blood out of this wound. And so I just remember getting blood like all over the sink, all over the floor, and even in like the little crevices between the tiles. And the ranger told me later that they had just cleaned the bathrooms that morning. The ranger though was just glad that I was okay and safe, and admonished me next time to email them instead of leaving a message. And so then I got in my car and I just started driving back to Gainesville. The ranger had given me a printout of like where the emergency room was in Tallahassee, since I couldn't get that information on my flip phone. And I pulled off on that exit and went into a parking lot. And I remember just sitting there and thinking, should I go to the emergency room or not? And I just was so tired, I couldn't even decide. So when it stopped bleeding, I decided to just say, well, it'll heal. I don't want to deal with this. I got back in the car, went to Gainesville. That night, I got my first migraine and I felt super exhausted. And the migraine went away after a few days, but that tiredness lingered and it actually intensified and it morphed into depression and suicidal thoughts for the next 3 years. Tired and exhaustion were just buzzwords. You know, like when, so yeah, thinking about this, you know, science sometimes is really great, but it can also be used as ways to avoid asking ourselves what it is, what's going on. We just throw ourselves right into the research. And so for me, I had to when I went to therapy, that's when I started figuring out, untangling all the connections. Remember that nude goddess from Boise State, that nude Peltidra? I really was jealous of her. And I was just so exhausted all the time from just running away from myself and from the person who I was inside, a woman. And so I transitioned and now I'm very happy. And I am a Peltidra. I am a woman who likes being out in the woods and I like having lots of fun and I'm very happy out there now. I leave my clothes on though because there's too many bugs and ticks in Florida. So in case you were wondering what a Peltidra looks like, here I am. As for the lichen, you're just gonna have to Google it. Thank you.
Yay. Just like Laurel did for all of us in our rehearsal, when she first shared her story, it seemed like she surprised all of you. Laurel, Laurel, take a look at the chat. People were like, oh, this is what, I didn't expect this in the ending, and how it all came together and how you made your discovery and growth. And I hope you really feel what Laurel did there. That is very difficult to do, but that gives a lot of meaning to stories. A lot of times we feel like we want to tell a story, but we leave out the emotion or the feeling or the meaning making from it that we gained from it. And if we leave those things out, it can feel like a lot of details or a lot of context without like the emotional meat of the story. Laurel does an amazing job of telling us the science and what we don't lose anything around what she's studying or what her experience as a scientist is, but we gain everything of knowing her more deeply and the journey that she's been going on alongside growing as a scientist and everything that that entailed too. So that's some added magic that we can gain from her story in that example. A lot of people too, Laurel, were totally freaking out when you cut your finger in that moment. And that's another raising the stakes moment of like, where is this going? And people are very concerned about your flip phone. I would like to know through the chat if you still have that flip phone. I would really like to know that. So if anyone, you could put it up for auction at this point, and I'm sure someone on the call wants to purchase it, like Trista's t-shirt. All right. Now, after all this time of learning about lichens and terrifying snakes and flesh-eating spiders and wasps in your pants, it is now time for our final story. Remember, after our last story, Chelsea will come back on, tell you a little bit about our scientists, and then we are going to have a Q&A. So if you still have burning questions left over for the scientists about their stories or about their career, about their life, about lichens, whatever you want to ask about, they're here for you. So hang around. Our last final, it's kind of sad, storyteller is Natapol Krai-Situdomsuk, and he's originally from Bangkok, Thailand. He's a PhD candidate in the plant pathology department studying mushroom evolution. Aha. He focuses on a group called the bird nest fungi, and his favorite hobbies include swimming, fictional writing, and listening to opera. Could these people get any more amazing and fascinating? I'm going to do a little work on my hobbies starting tomorrow. Here's Natapol.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Taylor, for the introduction. And good evening again. Thank you for sticking around this far. As she mentioned, I'm a mycologist. I study mushroom evolution and taxonomy. For those who do not know, taxonomy is the science of classification. In the old days, we use morphology, or how they look, to categorize fungi. Nowadays, we use molecular data to classify them. The best way to use the entire DNA or genome to map them out on the evolutionary tree of life, a study we call phylogenetics. And as you can imagine, I spent many days and nights in the lab trying to extract DNA out of fungal specimens. Now that we get the background out of the way, allow me to tell you about one of the most memorable days of my life. It was January 1st, 2020, New Year's Day. Other people might be drinking champagne, relaxing on the beach, or partying their hearts out. After all, this is supposed to be a delightful day to celebrate, right? Not for me. I remember myself standing in the lab with my eyes brimming with tears. My experiment has failed again. Honestly, I lost count how many times I failed this extraction procedure. I was trying to extract high quality DNA out of 5 fungal species and send them for whole genome sequencing. The protocol was supposed to take 3 weeks to finish. I started in September and expect to have it done by October at the latest. Boy, I had never been more wrong. Yes, we all know the frustration of failing an exam once or twice, but imagine more than 25 times in a row. I bet you start going insane. That's exactly what happened to me. It had been 4 months and I still couldn't get the purified DNA I needed. I tried my best to follow the established protocol exactly. After many trials, I was starting to lose my mind. I looked around and all I saw were lab glassware and reagents. And all I heard was the lab freezer humming. I felt like they were laughing at me for some reason. I started to look for other lab members for consolation. But of course, it was a holiday, so naturally no one was around. My advisor was on vacation with his family. I wanted to scream out loud, but managed to stop myself on the off chance of someone actually being in the building. So I thought to myself, maybe this is it. Maybe this is a sign that I should give up on this project or even on the PhD itself. As I was contemplating whether or not to quit, a moment of history flashed into my mind. I, s- I saw myself sitting in my advisor office crying. It was 4 years ago when I first experienced a lab fail. It was a basic PCR fail, which is a completely normal thing for all biologists. For those who aren't familiar, PCR is a technique to kind of focus on a part of DNA and amplify it many, many times. So we can use that part of DNA for downstream molecular analysis. Going into graduate school, I thought that if I follow lab procedure to the T, everything would work out 100% of the time. I was mistaken. I didn't take into account that there are many uncontrolled variables in lab work. Fortunately, my advisor is one of the wisest, kindest, and most understanding people I know. He didn't mock my crying. Instead, he handed me a Kleenex and told me that we all have to fail in order to learn. This is why we call ourselves researchers. We search again and again and again for answers. If we always find the answer for the first time, then we would just call ourselves searchers. It's kind of funny. This recollection made me realize that I am not alone in this search. I know many graduate students who want to give up every day due to lab or fieldwork fail. Some give in to the temptation, but others stay determined and hold on to their passion. We believe that we are contributing to the scientific community, no matter how small. Having a reasonable expectation of yourself is the key to keep holding on. I learned to accept that most lab work will not go according to plan. My advisor often says that asking for help is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. You can be an independent scientist and still seek advice from others. This is something I shall never forget as a scientist. Finally, I pick up my phone, and dial my advisor number. I call him not to hand in my resignation, but to ask for his guidance. He recommended modifying the protocol slightly. I tried the next week, and it worked. At least DNA of 2 species have been submitted and passed the quality control by the Joint Genome Institute. Fast forward, I recently passed my qualifying exams and became a PhD candidate, which is one step closer to graduation. I'm still learning new lab techniques and working diligently to get all those fungal genomes. In the end, I believe in the old adage, where there is a will, there is a way. Thank you.
Yeah, not a Paul. I love that. How many people? So everybody wants this advisor. So Natapal, if you're going to hang on to this advisor, please get in touch with them this evening and just reserve that human being for the rest of your life. Anyone in any field of study at this point is wanting to reserve your advisor. So much good advice in there from your own insights and experiences, and also borrowing from him. And I love the difference, as many people did, it sounded like, between researcher and searcher, and that it's not a sign of weakness to ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness to tell stories about failures. It's not a sign of weakness to show up for yourself and be vulnerable and change course. And so all of these have been examples of that in their own way. Natapal, as you get closer, I think that you have plenty of days of champagne and beach visiting ahead of you, whether it's January 1st or not. So that's really exciting, and there's so much victory in that story about failure as well. I want to point out too that Chelsea, one of the comments in the chat like a while back during another story was from Caroline Storr. Hi, Caroline. She pointed out that these stories were taking her to a different place, and that in a time where none of us can really go and visit different places, it felt like she was on a journey, and that in and of itself was kind of a gift of this show. So that's a really special point that she makes there. And thanks
Yeah,
to all
thank
of
you.
our storytellers and for everyone who was involved in the chat. There was so much goodness there.
Yeah, thank you so much, Taylor. And thank you to all the storytellers. Taylor, I'm glad you jumped on after Nat's story so I could wipe my tears away a little bit before I got back on camera.
I know you hadn't heard the fullness of that yet after hearing his pitch, but hearing this for the first time, we were all emotional in the rehearsal as well, hearing it.
Yeah, so I just want to thank all of our storytellers one more time, and I'm going to give you guys some ways to continue following them. If you have any questions in the chat, I know we've had a lot of really awesome commentary. It's been really, really entertaining to watch. I felt like this was one of the first Zoom webinars I've attended, at least myself, organized and attended, that I actually felt a lot of connection to all of you. So this has been really amazing, and I hope all of you have felt similarly. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here, and this is just a PowerPoint slide that lists the different ways to follow our scientists. So this first slide here has Aditi, Ali, and Laurel's on it. You'll see the Ali and Coco's science show. So that's the science show that Taylor was, that Taylor was talking about earlier when she introduced Ali. And as well as following Lep, Like, and Laurel, and DTJ on Twitter to follow those three. I have 2 slides full because their photos were so beautiful. I didn't want to squish them all into one so you guys could see their faces another time. And then for the other ones, we have Trista Brophy, and then we have Not My Sites. Oh, I should have practiced that. But you can follow Nat for sure. And then 3 different ways to follow Guts and Glory G&B and future shows there. And we can also link these in the chat as well. So if you're jotting these down, also if our scientists could go ahead and put their different screen names in there too. And then I'm going to stop sharing here and see if we have any questions from all of you, and put my screen for everyone to see in, hopefully, there's so many things to click on when you're running a Zoom webinar. So here we go. We're in gallery view now. So hopefully, I'm hoping my scientists will come back on, turn their cameras on so we can see your faces one more time. This is my vision of everyone walking back on stage again. So imagine that the curtain closed and they reopened and Trista's cat is there. And now we can ask some questions. So far, I just have one question that can be really for all of you. Any of you can answer. So we have someone asking in the chat everyone's a little curious about what got you interested in your specific species or your area of study. Does anyone have a little story that might go with that question? What got you interested in what you're studying now? I know Aditi has a cool bat story because I've heard it before. But if anyone else wants to speak up and answer that question.
I kind of just stumbled into lichens. I had to do like a senior thesis at New College of Florida. I thought, I want to climb trees. I'll study epiphytes. And when I told a friend, a former boss, that I was interested in lichens, which were epiphytes, she said, "Oh, I know some people in Everglades National Park." And so it was just like really fortuitous and really unexpected. I just remember them leading me to a tree and they're like, "Yeah, there's 3 species of this one genus on it." And I was like, wow. And then that's all I needed.
That's amazing. Does anyone else want to jump in there? Ali?
I've always kind of been interested in like plants, bugs, everything, birds. And so, but what really got me into like the education side of science, from a young age, my family had these really old like encyclopedias, and I'd make my siblings and all my friends take notes. And I would just go like, okay, today we're learning about snakes. And so I'd make everyone play school. And so I've always kind of had like an interest in the science as well as an interest in making everyone learn from it. So I love that my whole background.
Yeah, it sounds like you've been learning and teaching from an early age. I love that so much. That's great. Anybody else want to chime in? Aditi? Yeah.
Sure. Well, I think my bat story is like a couple of years in the making, because the first bats that I actually ever saw were these massive fruit bats, which have like a 6-foot wingspan. And they used to visit my garden back home in India. My grandmother planted this mango tree, and they would come like every day. And every day I'd just be going out there and photographing them and then taking the bus ride home. And every time at the bus stop, I'd be like looking up, and then everybody'd be like, what is she doing? And then, you know, when everybody like looks up with you, these massive winged things would be like flying overhead. So I've always had this fascination with creepy crawly things, and perhaps my first attempt was what you heard about today. But I think just a love of the natural world and like everything that's in it, especially snakes. Hoppers are the best, by the way. Hoppers are the best.
Nat or Trista, did you want to jump in, or should I ask another question?
Well, I can just say quickly that I kind of stumbled upon it like Laurel. I was an undergrad, a biology major, and I was looking for, you know, an internship to do for a senior thesis. So I got to work in my home country, Thailand, during the summer, and I got into this lab. You know, there was the only lab that opened for interns. So I applied, and they were like, "Oh yeah, come work for us." And then yeah, she taught me how to like look at mushrooms and, you know, do all that microscopy thing. And after that, you know, I was finding a person to like a mentor, an advisor for graduate school, and I reached out to this advisor. His name is Matthew Smith. If you guys want to know his name, he's an amazing advisor. And yeah, and I was really lucky to have found him here in UF.
That's awesome. And if any of you have attended our mushroom event that we had back in August, Matthew Smith was one of our panelists on that. So you may have seen him before and didn't even know. Trista, do you want to answer the question? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I actually started my undergrad studying chemistry because I thought, oh, maybe I want to be a pharmacist or anesthesiologist. I was really into chemistry. Like my dad, when he was going to school, he went later in life, and he always had all of these chemistry textbooks at home, and I was super interested in that. But then I failed organic chemistry. And I had to take it 2 more times, and I passed it, but then I also had to take organic chemistry too. After that, I was like, chemistry is not for me. So the closest thing that I could transfer to and like keep the maximum amount of credits in my undergrad was actually environmental science. So I transitioned, and I wanted to get done and get out of there. And then I was like, oh, wow, I really like environmental science. I traveled to Australia. I worked in a conservation ecology center, and sort of realized through that project, like the impacts of land use and human land management on animals. And so I came back and went to graduate school, and now at UF, I had no like GIS or remote sensing experience, and I sort of got thrown onto this project that required the use of NASA satellites. And now I work for NASA. So that's really cool. And now I love satellites. So it was a really interesting transition over time.
That's amazing. I think all of you are so brave, and not just because you've dealt with wasps, snakes, spiders, and the like, but because you all have taken these science classes that always scared me the most. So awesome job, everybody. I have another question. So I'm wondering if each of you could maybe tell us the coolest place you've been able to travel to as a scientist. Caroline's comment in the chat there really got me thinking of all the cool places that scientists get to go. Ali, yours might be Madagascar. I don't know, maybe you've been somewhere that you liked even more, but Aditi, you looked excited about that question. Do you want to tell us the coolest place you think you've been?
Yes, bats have taken me everywhere. Into caves, like really hot caves in the Caribbean, which amazing. Everyone, when they think of the Caribbean, they're thinking beaches, but they have these really hot caves with these really amazing bats in them. And the other cool place that I got to travel to was in the middle of the Amazon rainforest in Peru. And I got to hang out with bat people for 10 days. And it was the quietest point in my life because my phone didn't work. And I was like having fear of missing out. But I think your research can take you amazing, amazing places. And yeah, you should keep an eye out for these things.
Awesome. Anybody else want to jump in on that one?
Well, nothing can top Madagascar for me, and it's really hard to follow Aditi with that one. But my master's, a lot of it had to do with the deserts of West Texas, and out in West Texas, it's mountainous desert. So you have mountainous desert grasslands. So it's pretty fun up there. And we were ecosystems ecologists, our lab. So we did a lot with plants, but we would also set up camera traps. And so we would find things like black bears, mountain lions, ocelots, all on this one little basin between two mountains. And to set those up though, we had to hike up there, and I had fireproof boots from a field or a prescribed burn class, and my boots melted at the top of the mountain. So that was pretty exciting and really beautiful. Such a beautiful place.
That sounds wild. Anybody else want to jump in?
Between my undergrad and my master's, I worked a summer through the Student Conservation Association. And the name is escaping me, but it's the third largest island in the United States. And it's basically in Alaska. And it's got like 3,000 people. And so I just remember being able to go and catch salmon for dinner. And also just, I never had been so surrounded by nature. It was pretty cool.
That's awesome. Nadapol, is there, and this question is from me to you. Thailand is one of my favorite places that I've ever traveled. I'm wondering if there's any type of fungi in Thailand that is really cool that we couldn't find here.
Yeah, you know, there are a lot of fungi that are tropical and, you know, endemic to Thailand. And a lot of new species have been described from Thailand. And I would say that we have some new truffles that were described last year. I can't remember the name exactly, but you know, if you happen to go to Thailand, you know, one of my favorite places, things to do in Thailand is to go out in the woods and, you know, look for mushrooms, and you know, you find sort of different diverse fungi, and some of them might be also common in Florida too because of the tropical climate, but a lot of them are so very different. I mean, I wish I could just, you know, go there like for the entire month and just spend time with all the mycologists in Thailand. Yeah, it's very fun
Yeah,
place.
that's awesome. Now I need to go back and pay more attention to the mushrooms. I guess there was another question in here, and I'm going to kind of expand it. But someone was asking, and I see a couple of you have answered, but any advice that you might give to either a first-year grad student or just anyone who's you know, just becoming interested in science now. So someone who's, you know, just at the beginning of their career, or someone who's not quite there yet and just, you know, just now beginning to be interested in science. Advice to either of those. Does anyone have an answer? Trista, go for it.
Yeah, so I'll just, I'll be vulnerable here and tell you I'm a 35-year-old PhD student. It took me 9 years to complete my bachelor's degree. And there was a lot of in and outs along the way to get to this point. But for me, the biggest thing was just keep going. Like I knew that I wanted to study. I love academia. I love school. I love learning. And like, even though life threw all sorts of things at me along the way, and things like failing 2 chemistry courses when I'm majoring in chemistry, right? I even failed my very first GIS course, and now I'm, you know, like doing GIS and remote sensing all the time. So failures happen all the time. And if you stop there, just don't stop there. That's the whole takeaway. You really are never going to know everything. And that's something that I personally struggle with, because I feel like I should know way more than I do at this point. But then when I take a step back, I realize, well, I know a lot, and I have the capacity to learn more, and I have as long as my life goes on, I'll keep learning. So I know when you start grad school, it's very scary, and you're going to have a lot of failures, and maybe with research, hopefully not with coursework in grad school, but even if it happens, like, you can get past it. And also, I would caveat all of this with, if you realize that grad school is not for you, that's okay too. It's not for everybody, and some of us may feel like forced to go into it because of society, social pressures, family pressures, whatever. But the biggest thing that we can take away, and I think Laurel's story really hit on this, is you have to listen to yourself and just keep going.
Yeah, I think that's really, really, really great advice for anyone. Don't be afraid to fail. And that's kind of the whole point of this story. And when you do fail, think about what you can learn from those. I think Natapol hit hard on that in his story as well. Any advice from the rest of the crew here?
Yeah, I would say, to echo, what Laura was saying, it's okay not to be okay, and it's okay to struggle. You like you are always focused on your work, and you're thinking, oh, maybe you are the only, one who has your failure, but that's so not true. Like, if you look around and talk to other grad students in your department, in your college, you will find that they fail maybe like many more times than you have, and so to know that you're not alone really helps me a lot. And when you need to talk to someone like grad students, like fellow grad student, I usually like very understanding of what you're going through, and just have fun with your study. Don't I would say not don't stress too much, but it's kind of impossible not to stress. But even you're in grad school, so yeah, just take care of yourself a lot. Yeah, that would be my top priority.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nat. And I just went ahead and put everyone's Twitter names there in the chat as well. You can ignore where it says small blue diamond. That is credit of Twitter. The copy paste is a little interesting there. Any other advice from everyone? Yeah, Aditi, go for it.
Yeah, I think never forget that, like, you will fail, and like, this wasn't even my worst fieldwork fail, so like, think about that. I think there's a lot of like hope in there that, you just need to pick yourself up and keep doing what you do because you love it. I really love what I do, and it helps to know that there are people around me who are so wonderful and so vulnerable, and they share their amazing stories, and then that kind of keeps you going. And also take time out for yourself, because grad school is grad school. It's always going to be there, but you want to take care of yourself and just have fun. Go photograph something, creepy crawly or bats or something, but or mushrooms or lichens. But take care of yourself and find that community, and you're gonna do great, whatever you do.
Such great advice. I hope our question asker is writing these things down, because it's not very often you get all these awesome things to keep in mind all in one evening. And then I think we'll go ahead and ask one more question, and before we close out. So someone was asking for some more cool science facts. At the beginning, we asked if you were here for stories or science, and stories and science. And there were some people who only wanted science. So maybe they're not too pleased just yet. We haven't given them enough. Who knows? Anybody want to tell us like their favorite science fact about maybe what they study or just in general before we close out the night? Anything?
Sure, I can go.
Go for it.
Okay, so remember when I said a lichen is a symbiotic relationship between a fungus and a photosynthesizing partner? It can actually be much more complicated than that. Sometimes there can be one fungus and two photosynthesizing partners in one lichen entity, and that also happens in Peltidra. There's also all these microbiomes in lichens, like, in our guts and our body parts, we have all these microbes. Lichens are no different. And since these are such a complex symbiosis, we don't actually know how a lichen is formed. We don't know that mechanism because there's free-living fungus, free-living photosynthesizing partner. How do they get together? We still don't know.
That is wild. There's so much that I don't know about lichen, but it is kind of humbling to know that there's a lot you don't know about lichen, because it makes me feel a little bit better.
It wasn't until molecular techniques that we really started untangling it.
It's crazy. Anybody else want to hit us with some science facts before we end the evening? Aditi, go for it.
I have some.
Oh, Nat has one too.
Sorry.
Yeah, go
No,
for
I
it, Nat.
just-
You're unmuted already.
Yeah, okay, just to go off lichens, mushrooms are very fun. So I like to tell people, like, when you think of mushroom, they think of the Mario and his mushroom, and like he is a mushroom and he grows up, very tall. And it turned out that that mushroom is based on a species called Amanita muscaria, and it's actually poisonous. So Mario is not supposed to eat that mushroom because he would die. But but it's very colorful. So they use that in the cartoon, and also like the mushroom that we eat in grocery store, the white and brown and portobello mushrooms, they all belong to the same species. But they just have different colors and different stages. So that's very, yeah, I didn't learn that until I came here, and I was like, learn a little bit of facts like every day when you go to grocery store and things like that. Yeah.
That's great. Good to know. All right, we have lots of requests for a bat fact.
Yes, bat facts. If you've ever been to the bat houses down the road near Lake Alice, you'll notice that there are so many bats that come out at night, and they're so awesome for our environment because they eat so many insects, right? These Tudarida are amazing. They're amazing flyers, and we can thank them for like fewer mosquitoes being around. So go to Darida, go bat houses. You should go check it out, socially distance if you can. But they're amazing. I think around 500,000 bats come out each night, and they're just drinking water, eating insects, and generally being amazing for the environment.
Thank you. Great shout out PSA for bats. Any other science facts before we close out? Allie, you got some mint facts to share or something?
Well, I could do a mint fact. I was gonna jump on the chameleons, but I'll say for the mints, a lot of their compounds are for anti-herbivory, and so probably one of my favorites is alpha-pinene, which is in rosemary, is also in pine trees, unrelated plants, super cool, same structure, and they both smell amazing. As far as chameleons go, their skin cells are these really special structures that are basically layers on layers of pigments, and they can turn different ones on to change colors. So the ones I was mostly looking at could only really go from white to like a dark gray or a black, but they'll do it for aggression or signaling or for hiding. But I did see one where my field hand was a certain position from me, and the chameleon was between us, and the chameleon changed colors to match his light blue shirt and his dark blue denim from my position, and it was the coolest thing. So that's my fact.
That's
And
so cool. They're ombre chameleons.
Right, exactly. And also, everyone needs to go look on YouTube for the Indri call. It's their largest lemur, and they just have this really beautiful call, and I got surrounded by them once. So they're kind of like, the sound is kind of like howler monkeys, but I'll put a link in the chat for that.
Amazing. And then I'm going to go ahead and also put the link in for our Qualtrics survey, which I really hope all of you take to fill us in on what you thought about tonight's event, and give you guys a chance to click that. It'll also arrive in your email inboxes tomorrow. And while you guys are all navigating there, Trista, did you have a fact you wanted to share?
Sure. So there are 17 polar, orbiting, and low inclination satellites that just belong to NASA. I mean, there's like dozens more from other space agencies, but I actually just found this out recently and I was like, wow, that's a lot of junk up in space actually flying around. So I'm pretty sure when I've seen shooting stars before, it was probably just a satellite flying. They're really cool though.
That's hilarious. Now I'm questioning all of the wishes I've ever made, potentially on satellites. All right. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you all of our scientists for being so brave and vulnerable with us tonight. And thank all of our attendees for sticking with us to the end here. I hope you all enjoyed our show. Go ahead, take that survey. I'm going to say it one more time. Thank you, Taylor, for being such an amazing host for us. We couldn't have done this show without your amazing support and also your coaching for all of these stories.
You did
yeah,
very
I'll give you a chance to say something else.
Oh no, that's great. I'm so appreciative to the storytellers and to you, Chelsea, and for everyone who's here. I can feel the enthusiasm even virtually, which is so cool. That's what we were shooting for. Yeah. Thank you all for being here.
Awesome. Well, thank you all. Good night.
Bye. Thanks for coming.
Bye.